Kicking off from where we left off, Joe is the only man who knows Carlos was not lucky, he was smart. He's the man that Joe needs to set him ablaze. Meanwhile, Danpei is taking down the gym as both men are now supposed to be retired, leaving a note detailing his reason. He can't bear to let his boy who became his son suffer anymore, just like any parent really. While Joe's tiny posse realizes the news, but inside the gym Joe is boxing with more energy than ever, because he won't let them close that gym, rebuilding the gym with his own hands as he sees that Carlos is having yet another fight. Running to the TV, it's round 9 and Carlos is once again a bum, being offensively dismantled. But did you see that? A cheap punch with an elbow and Harajima has forfeited. Man got knocked out because Carlos is a cheeky man who's going about 100 miles an hour on the road, and his next fight is against Tiger. So in a way we can see a bit of karma and vengeance for Joe. All the while Jose Mendoza, the world champion's match against Carlos, is being negotiated. Carlos training with a little guest watching from afar, and it's clear that Carlos was mocking everyone. Joe getting a clear review, asking about the elbow move as Carlos nearly kills a poor man. Robert trying to get Joe forced out the gym as Joe does what he does best, rage bait, and ask about that elbow strike, a little cheat code. No one else knows about it but Joe does, and Joe doesn't care about snitching on Carlos, he just wants a job. A little spar for money as he keeps annoying Carlos even more because that's his specialty. And Yoko actually lets Joe have his spar, with specific terms, while Danpei is working on a construction site being told about Joe fighting. And it's time, Joe slipping out the way as the music hits.
Please, music!
Joe eating a combo and a barrage, sending him down instantly, still losing before cross counter sends the majestic boxer onto the ground as Joe takes his headgear off. Music's off, it's a fight, but then Joe vomits. Robert preparing to end it, but look at that determination. Both men firing at each other without any mercy. Joe vomiting as they keep giving it their all against each other. Joe eating another barrage, sending him down onto the mat. This is a brawl, while Joe also realizes that these Carlos punches remind him of the great Toru Rikishi. Those are the same punches he once felt. Joe firing multiple punches, eating that favored elbow strike, because this isn't even a spar, it's passion. Even Yoko preventing the end of the fight. Joe and Carlos firing their fists at each other, temple punches over and over again, and finally the fight is stopped. But despite it all, Joe appears fixed, the broken fighter revived, and once again it's beautiful. Joe is officially back this time.
That's what I'm talking about.
And elsewhere at night, Robert appears to have good news, and he tells Carlos the facts. Jose Mendoza will officially be fighting Carlos for the world title, who is going to have his final fight against Tiger, with Carlos embracing his serious side, noticing Joe is in the crowd as he leaps into the ring, confidently declaring he will knock out Tiger in round 1. A message to Joe, but also the exact same pose and statement Toru Rikishi did while they were in the prison. The bell ringing, Carlos slips out the way, and oh my god. Carlos executes Tiger with a cheeky elbow for good measure, sending the man into orbit as he promptly lands on the ground with his balls probably in his throat because he just got fucked up. Carlos made his declaration and the match ended exactly how he promised, because Carlos Rivera is the beltless champ. As he gets his interview, where it's revealed his strategy was him pretending to be a bum, because people wouldn't want to fight a monster like him naturally. It's smart, while they also declare Carlos's match against Jose is set, but he wants one more match, Joe Yabuki, and that has Robert going insane because that is dangerous. And listen to this.
No!
As he has also escaped from his hotel room and now is missing. Robert and Carlos grew up together in the slums, knowing what it was like to struggle, and he wants his boy to succeed no matter what, while Joe decides he should buy Christmas presents, assassinating Danpei with sweets while Santa Claus has visited the children.
Merry Christmas! Merry Christmas! Thank you! The goat!
I never stopped believing he was real. And as to be expected of poor children, Carlos never had a Christmas, he never got any presents. While Joe and Carlos actually meet face to face having a private conversation, while Carlos asks Joe about tomorrow, the fact that tomorrow might never come, which is why he wants to knock Joe out, as the pair end up in a park, while Joe suggests the idea of them fighting here and now, but it's snowing. And that has Carlos embracing his inner child as Carlos trips Joe up and then making him a bull, making the great escape onto the slide, blocking and weaving with expert grace before poking Joe down the slide, because this isn't a fight, it's joy. While Robert and Yoko are busy looking for the pair, while Danpei notes that both men are similar, maybe not in skill but the same mentality, while Robert notes that Carlos may have incidentally awoken his other side in the ring, and Robert doesn't want Carlos to change, which is why he doesn't want this fight, and ironically neither does Danpei. Joe is a boxer that Carlos has dreamt of fighting as the pair are finally found, and despite all the obstacles and the issues, they will fight as Yoko offers to pay the fine for the World Championship fight delay. And after all the fun and jokes, it's time. Both men instantly locking in, starting with quick jabs, no time for second gear, As these men are firing on all cylinders, Joe landing a massive left, pressing Carlos into the corner before bang. A massive uppercut and body blow has Joe having a mental shutdown. Strolling across the ring with a smirk, slipping out the way as these two fire until the bell rings. The first round and it's already fireworks, but it also turns out that Carlos is holding back. Second round beginning, Joe lunging forward as Carlos combos him onto the ropes, beating Joe down onto the mat, an increase in power and Joe was seeing stars.
Humiliation.
And naturally he gets up, boom. The cross counter sends Carlos down. And despite the fact Carlos appears confident, because he knows about the cross counter, he took it intentionally and blunted the force. It's the third round with an ambience in the sky. Both men exchanging, Carlos delivering an uppercut, cross counter. No. Carlos delivering a massive uppercut, sending Joe down in quite brutal fashion. Getting up because that's who Joe is. Carlos instantly on the prowl, being taunted as he takes a bait, going for his cross counter, but then Joe adapts, blowing that body out with the assistance of the ropes. Naturally, Carlos gets up with beauty because that's who he is. Both men fire, as Carlos tells Joe the next time he does that move, he's getting his balls taken. Carlos ignoring his coach's recommendation for the fourth round. Both men giving their strongest punches with insane speed, as Joe finds himself against those ropes, and you know the drill. Counter, counter, but no counter as Carlos stops Joe. A massive right uppercut having Joe outside the ring, with his brain probably rattling as he somehow gets up, taking an onslaught from Carlos because he's a wounded animal. Lefts pulverizing Joe onto the ropes as he's saved by the bell. Now it's round 5. Joe heading out early, taunting Carlos as both men collide in the center. It's currently 10 minutes to midnight and Joe's being overpowered with a big body blow, sending him down, staying down for the maximum healing. But Joe is eating those punches, sending him down again. Joe landing right left body blow, misses and weaving, living on the fighting spirit as he leans against the ropes. Did you say counter, 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 counter? Carlos doing the arm strat, but Joe ducks underneath and... It's safe to say Carlos may have just died.
Stand up, Carlos! Stand up! Stand up! Please!
And he does with a mysterious look, eating punches about his guard as the bell saves him, but Robert checks on him and what in the actual fuck?
Made in heaven.
Round 6 beginning with another ambience in the air, as Joe sees Carlos and oh my lord, Joe hit by Stardust, sending him down for a knockdown. And if you're confused like everyone else, Carlos is hitting Joe at what can only be described at the speed of light. And it's handling Joe, as despite Joe's boxing, he's smited down in the ring without remorse. Carlos truly is made in heaven, right? It's also officially New Year's, round 7. Those punches Carlos is using is the super weapon against Jose Mendoza, but Carlos wants to use it against Joe. Joe's still getting hit with the punches of light going down. At this point, Joe has been dead 10 times. Carlos is clenching all his muscles at once, which is utter insanity. Entirely possible. I do this to homeless men. As Joe sees through the beams of light, but Carlos says, "Fuck no, baby!" Left, right, upper, body blow. You're brawling against each other and a cross counter ringing out as both men sink to the ground for a double knockdown, and somehow they both rise to their feet as the bell rings. Joe waking up as both men start firing, duking it out in the center, because it's not a fight anymore, it's for the love of the game, with fluidity and beauty taking us all the way to the finale. The 12th round as both men head out to face the music. It's an inspiring sight with everyone in awe, firing their bombs against each other as the bell rings, signaling the end to it all. The winner doesn't matter, but this fight is declared a draw.
Carlos.
Besides that, Carlos is officially leaving for his fight against the world champion, slipping off the plane, and despite the jokes, that is creepy. While Joe is drinking alone, quite relatable.
Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy.
It's New Year's now, while Dampe makes jokes about punch drunk syndrome. Everyone having their own individual parties, while Joe kinda makes a fat joke to Nishi, which may have hurt his feelings, a lot more than Joe intended, as him and Dampe prepare a retirement party. 10 wins, 3 losses and 2 draws. All in all, not a terrible career for Nishi, with flowers from Yoko. It's an emotional retirement and Nishi wants one last spar with Joe. After all, it's the only language they know. Teapot ringing, Joe brutally knocking Nishi down, but he's fine, as Joe himself gets knocked down as they fight into the night. A few days later, Joe visits Yoko under the guise of getting money. Carlos's fight is set to begin shortly as Joe receives his check, which is 6 times the usual payment, as both of them argue, and the fight's over. Carlos was knocked out in the first round. And Robert says Carlos was broken by Joe. Carlos took too much damage, making him punch drunk, and Jose is respectful, asking for a rematch because he knows that Carlos is an amazing fighter. But Carlos is crippled.
Goodbye, my Carlos Libera.
Wolf retired after Joe, Rikishi died, and now Carlos. It's just sad, and now Joe is called the Grim Reaper. Joe sees it what who could be his future rival as he heads out with Noriko, who's scared about what might happen to Joe, but Joe doesn't care, because for him, boxing is an art, something that you can't quit, and he has to fight for the men who have lost their careers because of him. Danpei is struggling to find fighters for Joe because people don't want to fight a guy who can kill them. Yoko wants Joe to fight against Jose one day, and she'll do her best to find Joe an opponent, as I have a fucking seizure. While Noriko and Joe once again talk about boxing, the consequences, but then we get the best speech in sports anime. Joe talking about the fire burning inside him, waiting to combust.
真っ白な灰だけだ。
It's now been 2 months since Joe fought Carlos, Danpei calling in favors from Yoko to organize a match. Joe's opponent is Usman Somkit, the OBF 5th ranked boxer, and naturally Joe finds out Yoko organized it, but he doesn't insult her as it's fine. Usman is sparring against 2 different people at once with clear efficiency, dealing with them both. Apparently his toughness is next level, being 18-0 since switching from Muay Thai. Well, let's be honest, he's no Carlos, is he?
We don't care.
Joe reading the newspaper and seeing a defeated imagery of Carlos as we find out more details. Carlos has amnesia as you'd expect, unable to even remember the fact he was the legendary boxer who once rivaled the greatest world champion ever, wanting to visit him. But as it turns out from Yoko, Carlos isn't even in Los Angeles hospital. He's missing. They don't even know where he could be. Maybe he's back in Venezuela. But it's time for Joe's fight, and it's all business. Joe barring his opponent remorselessly, hitting him so hard the man is floating, and bang, launching the guy outside the ring in a matter of seconds, dedicating his victory to Carlos as we call it a day.